Okay, so let's just get right into this, shall we? I'm going to go through a list of all of the experiences that I've had. A lot of you that know me know of my spiritual teachings, that I'm a shaman, I'm herbalistic, all of those kind of things. But the thing that I don't talk about very often is the fact that I'm actually a lifelong experiencer of alien interaction, alien abduction. I've seen 13 crafts in my entire lifetime. The bulk of them was actually in the year of 2007. I had a full 1 year nonstop experience of things once I had learned to activate my Kundalini. And I'm going to get into that and talk about that a little bit with you as well. But I think that it's important for everyone to understand really who I am and what I've been through and what I've experienced in order for you to feel like you can trust me and talk to me about the experiences that you have had and that you've been through. Because I want to give you a platform to use your voice, to talk about your experiences, not just because it is really good to talk about it for everyone else to know that they aren't alone, but also it's very therapeutic for you to be able to discuss it openly so that you don't feel isolated and alone any further, because that's the whole reason why I don't talk about my own experiences. Literally no one around me understands what I've been through. And I have siblings that have also been abducted, but they don't want to talk about it. My mother was abducted. She doesn't want to talk about it. My grandfather, her father, saw UFOs and was even possibly abducted. But no one really wanted to talk about it. My grandfather was very open about it, but no one else wanted him to speak of it. The people in my world right now, my 6 degrees, only one person fully accepts that UFOs and aliens are a real thing, because she too has experienced it. But anyone else, they make these strange comments to me, where they don't necessarily want to offend me or hurt my feelings. But let me give you an example. I was watching a TV show a couple weeks ago with some other people in the room, some other people at my home, and they started talking about reptilians. I think it was that Unsolved Mystery show with William Shatner. And they started talking about reptilians and Mothman and different things like that. And I actually made the comment that I think that Mothman is really just a case of misidentification, and it's a reptilian with wings. Because I know for a fact that the NSA has a list of at least 57 species. As of 2009, a list of 57 known alien species from either off-world or actually, Earth is their terra forma, or however you say that. They originated on Earth. And there are 4 kinds of reptilians on that list. 2 types have wings, which I think is what the dragons were all about, honestly. And 2 types without wings, and one of those are earthbound. They live here on our Earth with us. They always have, underground in catacombs. And when I saw this list, guys, mind you, and let me tell you how I saw this list. I was a young, naive housewife who wanted to understand more about my experiences and sightings that I had had. And so naively, I'm thinking, well, if anybody knows, it's going to be the NSA, so I'll just go to their website and see. And they had this vault, this big round black vault with like the pie shape, names of different places in the vault. And one of them said known alien species. And I was like, aha, eureka. See, I knew if I went here the NSA is going to tell me what I'm looking for. So I just clicked on it, went right in the vault. It was public access. I guess they didn't expect that anybody would be ballsy enough to do that. But I did. I suffered a lot of hell for it later, immediately after the fact, matter of fact. But the fact remains that I read the list. And the two things that, well, three things really, that blew my mind that I saw on the list were reptilians, Bigfoot, and vampires. Because I know Bigfoot exists. I've seen Bigfoot species many times in my life. I grew up in Arkansas. They are very prominent there. Even the police officials, the judges, the government officials, everybody knows that Bigfoot exists in Arkansas. It's not a secret. It's not hoopla, right? I mean, they all know. They've all seen Bigfoot. We know for a fact Bigfoot exists. So that was no big deal. But to see them on a list of alien species kind of pissed me off, because I have always felt like Bigfoot is sort of like our Neanderthal leap to Homo erectus and Homo erectus, or however you say that. Because I'm not that scientific. But I always felt like they were the missing link. And they are very intelligent. I have Bigfoots in my backyard that I document on my Deja Brew paranormal research channel on YouTube. They love apples. They love peanut butter. They love candy bars. They love books. Like, they're real. They're very real. And they're very intelligent. They're not imaginary. They're not elusive. Unless you're not of a good soul. But that's beside the point. I'm getting sidetracked. So Bigfoot pissed me off that he was on the list of aliens, because I don't feel like they're an alien. But then reptilians and vampires, neither one I wanted to believe are real. Neither one. I know werewolves are real because I've seen one. Okay? Some people call it a dog man. It's the same damn thing. And I've seen a freaking werewolf. They're very freaking real. And I'm just trying to, be careful with my words, because otherwise I'd be saying something else. But they're very scary. They're very scary and very real. And I'm a very grounded, logical, scientific approach kind of a person. I don't say things lightly. I don't say things just by the seat of my pants. If I tell you something's real, if I tell you I know something for a fact, it's for a damn fact. I've done the research. I've done the scientific methods. It's real. All the way down to raising people from the dead. It's real. I know it for a fact. So I know for a fact werewolves are real. Vampires didn't want to believe that shit at all. Reptilians didn't want to believe that shit at all. Mainly because as a child, I watched this show called The Land of the Lost. And it had these things called Sleestack on it. That had like a UFO type deal. And these 3-finger handprint things that they would put their 3 fingers down in the controls on the ship to make stuff work. And these big red lights would start happening and things. And they looked very fake because it was very like, how do you say that? Like a Class B movie. Kind of fake, right? The costumes were very bullshit. You could tell it was a person in a costume in the show. But something inside of me would be absolutely terrified to the point that my little self would actually hide underneath of the couch every time the Sleestack came out on this show. But I needed to know more. And I was only like 4, 5, 6 years old. But I would watch this show because I needed to understand more. And I didn't know why. And I didn't know why I would react the way I did to the Sleestack. I do now. As a 50-year-old, I understand it. Because I've actually had encounters with them in my life. And it was something that our brain has this beautiful ability to block things that we can't process and handle and deal with. And my brain kept blocking those memories. Blocking them every time I would see them until I was old enough to handle it. which I'll get to in a minute. But it really pissed me off that they were on the list. And then to have 4 different types of reptilians and then subspecies of each of those, and what planets they come from or constellations, and whether they're friend or foe or neutral. I mean, this just really blew my mind, because I absolutely did not want them to be real. I wanted all of that shit that I was scared of to be a figment of my imagination and just stay that way for the rest of my life. I would have been perfectly happy if it stayed that way for the rest of my life. I promise you. But nevertheless, in 2009, I read this list on the NSA of these 57 known species. So I started digging in and doing more research because I'm a phenomenal researcher. I'm very passionate about it, and I don't stop till I get all the answers. All of them. This is part of the reason how I became an Anon, because I'm very, very good at the research. And yes, I realize with saying that I'm kind of outing myself in a sense, but regardless, I mean, it doesn't matter because they don't know my work, which is fine, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But so I started doing more research. Well, the more I dug into it, the more unfortunate my experiences became, because not only was the NSA targeting me now and tracking everything I did online under the handle that I used at that time, which was, you know, not necessary to name at this time. But there were men in black outside my home 24/7 in white vans, monitoring everything that went on. There were Black Hawk or some type of stealthy helicopters that would fly over my house very, very near the roof of my house quite frequently. They would jam our signals for our internet. They would cause our power to flicker and short out. It scared my children very badly. It angered my husband at the time very much. He told me that I should have kept my mouth shut and kept my head down and my nose clean, so to speak. They tossed our house. They wiped both of our computers. They stole my hard drive out of my laptop. Shortly after that, our house burned down mysteriously. We lost everything. The insurance paid for us to have a camper put on our land until our home could be rebuilt or purchased, whichever we decided. And so for 3 months, we lived in a small camper on our land with 5 children. And the camper was even broke into and tossed. Our phones were bugged. Our telephone line, our landline was tapped. You could clearly hear it. It was an ongoing harassment of the men in black, and very likely the NSA, and possibly even the CIA, for about 3.5 years. To the point where every time I would speak out and say something again, helicopters were so brazen that they would come at my car. Like, my car could be going down the highway this direction, and the helicopter would come down at me like it was playing chicken with me and look like it was going to crash right into my windshield, and at the last minute, you know, quickly raise up and, you know, see how far I would go and how brave I was, because they were trying to scare me to shut me up. Luckily, nothing further came of it, but that was actually when I really started speaking out and making sure that everyone around me knew what was happening. And that's when it ended, actually. And even now, honestly, to tell you all of this, it is a little bit unnerving because the things that I went through, and of course I don't want to put myself or my family in danger, but truths have to be spoken also, and we shouldn't be threatened, and we shouldn't be silenced in such extreme ways, especially. So, you know, I felt like there's something bigger to that, and I needed to understand why. So I started digging deeper. And if all of that harassment wasn't bad enough, then in 2011, I was raped by a reptilian that came into my house without asking, without permission, without my knowing, and raped me. And if the act of the rape itself wasn't hideous enough and painful enough, the true horror of it all was that he was trying to rape my mind. And I'm a strong person. And because of the experiences I've already had in life, I've been raped before. So he didn't have me at the rape, because I could block that out and override that. But when he locked onto my eyes, the way that vampires do in the movies, that's what this reptilian man did. He locked onto my eyes, and I couldn't look away, and I couldn't blink. And I felt like my brain was going to bleed. He was penetrating my brain and my memories. He was trying to hijack what I know. And I figured that out quite quickly, and I blocked him. And it took every ounce of everything I had to block him. But I did it. I successfully did it. I did not allow emotion or any kind of thoughts other than my warrior instincts, my soldier instincts, if you will, to be available. And I won. He didn't get in. He may have violated my body, but he didn't violate my knowledge, my knowing. And the look in his eyes showed that I was a worthy adversary, because he was surprised that I could keep him out the way that I did. And in a way, that experience for me was a lesson and a blessing, because it taught me just really how powerful I have become. And I can teach you to be that powerful too. To have that kind of armor, that kind of defense, that kind of steel door security against the enemy. Because they are a worthy adversary, for sure. But they won't win. And I can teach that to you if you're interested. But so, this experience definitely made me a believer, you see. Definitely made me a believer. But for years, this was a secret. I couldn't even tell my husband at the time. And definitely not my children, or my family, or my friends, or my coworkers, or anyone. I couldn't tell anyone, because they would have thought me crazy. And I knew that, because until I had had that experience, I didn't believe in reptilians. And I would have thought me crazy if it was someone else's story. So, back to a couple of weeks ago, there were some people watching a show with me. William Shatner was talking about the Mothman and the reptilians. And I was explaining how I think that the Mothman is a misrepresentation, or a misidentification, a case of misidentification, and that it's actually the winged reptilians. The people in the room tried to keep from rolling their eyes, tried to keep from saying something to cause a conflict or to offend me. And so they simply said to me, well, I don't really know how to feel about that reptilians could be real. Seems to me, this is them still, seems to me aliens might be visiting us. Aliens might be able to find us here on Earth. But to go as far as saying they're reptilians, I'm just not sure. And I thought to myself once again, yeah, see? See how hard it is for people like me who've had these experiences that can't even talk about it with people that are inside their own home. So I get it. I totally get it. It's really hard to talk about with anybody. So if you don't want to show your face, if you don't want to be on video at all, and you just want to share your story, just send me an email and I'll read it in confidence, in confidentiality of who you are. I will not identify you because I get it. Not everybody is as brave and as bold as others. And I understand completely why that is. Because in that moment, in that situation, in that scenario, there was no way I was going to speak up and tell them how I know for sure that reptilians exist. I just buttoned my lip and let them think and say whatever they want. Because they wouldn't have believed it anyway. So it wouldn't have done any good for me to speak out in that moment. But it does do good for people who are seeking this type of information on YouTube or Instagram or in Facebook groups where I always share my videos. Those people that are seeking that refuge, those people that are seeking like-minded or similar to their experience type people, they need to know that there are more of us. They need to hear that and have that reassurance that this is happening to a lot of people. So please, please share your story. This needs to be an open, honest dialogue so that that type of stereotyping and that type of silence from us completely ends. We need to be able to make the space for that to be spoke about, for us to be honest with the things that have happened to us. I mean, just that experience alone that I had, that's enough for one person in a lifetime. But I've seen 13 crafts. I've been on board about 5. I've seen multiple kinds of alien species and interacted with them. Some good, some bad. I've been taken against my will. I've been taken because I agreed upon it. I've been visited by some that are relatives in some sense. I've had enough experiences for probably 50 people in my one little lifetime here on Earth. This one trip. It's immense, and it's a lot to wrap your head around. And if there are others out there like me who have nowhere to turn, no one to talk to, I hope that they hear this message. hope that they know that they have someone on their side, somebody that understands them, that's been in their shoes, that can relate and be empathetic without judgment, with only comfort, concern, and a real need and love of conversation on this subject. There's a lot to be said about this subject, and ufology alone has been hijacked. Let's face it. And I know that for a fact too, because I've been a member of MUFON for 22 years. And I was a field investigator for several years. I know the ins and outs. And I know the people in the top echelons of the ufology field are either misinformation voluntarily or have been bought out. A lot of them, unfortunately. People that I used to look up to. People that I used to admire. That encouraged me to be the investigator and the researcher that I became. You know, a lot like the way Bill Cosby let a lot of people down because he was like our American dad. That's how I felt about the people in the ufology field that have let me down, because I did the research on them when I started noticing red flags and started being silenced and told not to say certain things or post certain things or ask certain questions. It's definitely been hijacked. And we can sit around and talk about that with all the other conspiracies, or we can do something about it. Because we, the people, have the power to change it. It starts with one person. And I volunteered to be the leader. Let's change it. All the little people have big voices. And we are powerful in numbers. So let's band together and be that voice that is needed and necessary for an intelligent conversation about what's really going on and what the agendas really are and where do we go from here. Because if you take all of that and you couple it with what I know about who we are and what we can do, we can change the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we truly can. And I can help show you how. So what kinds of craft have I seen? I've seen chevron that were lit up in red. I've seen smaller triangles that were lit up in neon blue. I've seen very large triangles that had no lights at all, no markings, no seams, no identifiable call letters or propulsion system, but they did have strobing lights on the front of them that they could turn into solid lights that look like car headlights coming through the sky. I've seen another type of black triangle that had a small peak at the back of it, almost like the diamond point, and they had lights that rotated and changed colors, red, blue, and green underneath in a rotation. I've seen the traditional round saucers with white lights around the outside, and I've also seen traditional round, almost bell-shaped or spinner, you know, like a top shape that had multicolored lights going around the outside, red, blue, and green. I've also saw small diamond shape, and I say small because I would think only one or two occupants could fit in them. They were that small. Larger than a car, but small anyway, you know. The blue triangle that I saw with the electric blue lights literally flew over my car and stopped in front of us and turned on its side about 10 feet off of the ground and hovered there. And it tripped me out so bad, I literally stopped my car in the middle of the highway, put it in park, and stepped out of my car to look because I could not believe what I was seeing. Myself and my teenage daughter both. We had to look very closely at this because it was beautiful and amazing. Absolutely amazing. What else? We've seen the cigar shape before, and I say we because normally I had witnesses. I either had teenage children or a friend or my husband at the time with me. So we saw the cigar shaped ones. We've seen the Zephyr blimp type ones that had sort of a thing across the top. Okay, sorry, I had to pause because I had a coughing fit. We've seen orb UFOs that were huge. I mean, like, it literally looked like the sun was landing in the neighbor's backyard. It was a big ball of red plasma. I don't know. But we took pictures and video of it, which were stolen when my house was ransacked again, unfortunately. Every time I tried to document them, our house was broke into and things were stolen and ransacked, or, you know, a house fire occurred. So we went through a lot of shit because I'm bold and I want to share the truth. And I'm still gonna. I'm still gonna. Because I'm protected. Oh, real quick, I want to go back to that conversation I was telling you about with the people that were here watching the show with me about Mothman and reptilians. They actually said, one of them actually said to me, they didn't know what to say about it all, but it wasn't something they thought would ever affect their life. So they didn't care either way. And I think that was actually what really bothered me about it. Because, you know, I felt the same way. Whether they're real or not, they're not ever going to affect my life. So it doesn't matter. Because I didn't want to believe in them anyway. Why would we want to believe in them? If they're bigger and stronger and mentally more powerful than most of us, why would we want to believe that they are real? You know, unless we just like being scared and living in fear, which I'm pretty sure most of us don't want to do. So, I mean, I understood why they were saying it, but it really, like, affected me deeply because I thought the same way until that happened to me. And then when that happened to me, that was worse than when I was raped by a human man and couldn't tell anyone. That was 10 times worse. You humans don't have shit on them when it comes to that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I thought the same way, that it would never affect me. And then that happened. So I guess maybe just really be careful what you say about stuff. Because God forbid something horrible happened to them to make them a believer. The way that it happened to me. Now granted, the likelihood of that happening is very slim to none. Because their path likely has nothing to do with disclosure and truths coming out and veils being unlifted and empowering people. And mine does. So it was a necessary thing to happen in order for me to be who I am. You know, and because of who I am. I guess it was a necessary thing. It was a lesson. That's how I'm going to choose to look at it. For sure. So, another one that was a kick in the pants for me was vampires. Which, again, I didn't want to believe in. I don't want to believe in. I really wish that it wasn't true. But it is. They're very real. And again, with this misidentification, much like the Mothman and the reptilians, are the vampire and black-eyed children and black-eyed adults, black-eyed people, which are both very real because I have encountered a black-eyed adult male. And I can tell you the story. My husband at the time, the same one that was the UFO witness, and my brother, who's like my best friend, the three of us had went to the eye doctor. I was going to get my brother some new glasses. His had gotten broke in a stupid accident, and his insurance wasn't going to pay for his right away, so I was going to pay for it for him. So the three of us went to town and went to the eye doctor. And while we were there, I decided to go outside and smoke a cigarette. So I stepped outside, smoked a cigarette real quick. And as I was coming back in, there was like this line of people right inside the door that, you know, like the door was this way for you to walk through. And a line of people was in front of me going this direction at some counter, I guess, like to wait to pick up their frames or whatever that were ready. I don't know. But this man that was in about the middle of the line, he was directly in front of me in his line. He was like straight in front of me as I'm walking through the doors. And he turns and he looks straight at me. And of course, when somebody turns and looks straight at you, you take notice of that. And, or at least you do if you're observant, you know, and aware of your surroundings, which I always am. And so I took notice of it and I looked straight at him, and his eyes were completely solid black. I mean, there was no whites in his eyes whatsoever. And mind you, I had never heard of black-eyed people before, ever in my life, until this happened. And I had to research it to understand what the hell I just saw. Because all I could process in my brain was that this was some kind of demon or something. But honestly, in that moment, it felt like a Highlander moment. You know, like there can only be one type of thing. It felt like, you know how in the Highlander show, they could sense each other. And I felt like he could sense me is what made him notice who I am. Because I am a light worker. And I've known this my whole life. I've known my whole life that I'm here for the awakening, and I've known my whole life how to use my abilities. Not necessarily how to control them, but that I could use them and that they were there and they were real. And so he noticed me. Something about my energy drew him to me, and his head snapped and he looked at me, and I locked eyes with him, and they were just solid black. And I knew, like, my higher self took over immediately and said to me, don't look away. Don't blink, show no fear, and put your barrier up. My barrier, right? That wall, that steel door that doesn't let them read your mind or your emotion. I just knew to do this, and I did it. I stared him down like I could have killed him if he messed with me. And all the while, I really, behind that wall that I had up, I'm freaking out. This person, whatever it was I was looking at, freaked me out. Terrified me to my core. Because I'm thinking this is some kind of demon or something, right? So I go on past him, and I went straight to the women's restroom, splashed some water in my face, stared at myself in the mirror, regained my composure after my little mini meltdown in the bathroom, walked back out to look for my brother and my then husband and this man to see where this man was. He was nowhere to be seen. He was not in the building anywhere. I grabbed my brother. I grabbed my husband at the time. I told them that I just saw a man with solid black eyes, no whites in his eyes. He stared me down. It scared me to death. So we walked the whole area looking for him and found him nowhere. Walked outside the building, looked everywhere out there, found him nowhere. I don't know where he took off to or why, but I feel hopeful that my stare down, that I was staring at him like I could kill him if he messed with me, kind of told him that I am an adversary that's worthy, you know, and he just knew he better get the hell out of Dodge. That's how I'm going to feel about it. But I don't know why it happened. I don't know why he was there. I don't know. I don't believe in coincidences at all. So I know there was some reason for me to learn about him and his kind. But I started researching and learning about black-eyed children, and it was always children. I could never find anything on the adults. It was always about the children. But they can't come in your threshold of your home or your car without your permission. If you do let them in, they make you feel ill and hypnotized. Excuse me. And to me, this just felt very vampirish, right? Or vampirish, however you would say that. And so I started doing more research on vampires and learning about them. And this stuff that goes all the way back to like Transylvania and Vlad the Impaler and the likes, that's not far-fetched bullshit, and it's not myth, it's not fairy tale, it's not lies, it's not made up stuff. This was real entities who look human, who in fact do drink blood. Not necessarily the way that the movies romanticize it to be, but they will drink blood. That's a fucking real thing. Sorry. That's a real thing. I have to be careful what I say because of flag words. Here. I know what I can do. If you don't believe me about the vampires and the blood drinking and all of that, that's okay. I want you to look something up. Okay? Look that word up. And while I'm on this, the word Chrome is a web browser. These words are used all over the place in public because there is a rule that all of these evil, dark entities have to abide by, and that is to give you an ounce of truth. And they're not taking anything from anybody without your free will giving permission in some way, shape, or form. They are trickers. They will trick you, convince you, pull at your heartstrings, your emotion, your kindness of your heart, whatever they can do to trick you, manipulate you, make you scared, whatever it is. But the bottom line is, if you're in fear and you don't have hope for a successful outcome, you just gave up your free will. If your heartstrings are being pulled at and you're feeling compassion for somebody and feeling guilt tripped, you just gave up your free will. You're allowing your better interest to be devoid for theirs. Okay? You're allowing it. Bottom line. Free will is the key. Okay? To all of this. Free will is the key. Including abduction, by the way. Including abductions. Free will is the key. If they can get you in a place of fear or awe or excitement or whatever, to where you're willing to go in some way, shape, or form, then they didn't break any laws to take you. They didn't break any laws to do whatever they do. Okay? And all of these words are used in public, all around us, all the time, in TV, in ads, in names of things we use in daily life, like Chrome, the Chromebook, the Apple, okay, is another one. I could list words all day long. Their symbolism and their wording will be their downfall as soon as all of you figure out the keys. And I have the keys, and I'm going to start teaching you the keys, because being spiritual is not just about being in tune with yourself and our divine creator. It's also about righting the wrongs and telling the truths. And I am going to lift some veils. This is a new year and a new me. And the veils are coming up like a shade that you can pull and it rolls up real fast. It's time to get going. It's time to wake up. So anyway, back to this guy. I really was freaked out by this guy. It was my Highlander moment. I started doing the research. I found out vampires are very real, that people really do drink blood, and that they're not really people. I also discovered that, like Vlad the Impaler, was in fact a vampire. A very real life vampire, just not like in the movies, okay? The movies portray it wrong. They romanticize it and portray it slightly wrong, because all they have to give you is an ounce of the truth. And the truth is that they do seduce you, they do hypnotize you, they do enchant you, they do fear you, cause fear in you, and they do drink your blood. Okay? And they are the undead to us. Okay? They are the dark side. The famous pirate actor is one of them. He even has a band by the same name, and his name is Johnny. Yeah, his last name is Depp. But the Vlad the Impaler, if you follow his family tree, his family bloodline, that'll take you to the Queen's house. And that's a fact. Yeah, she's actually the granddaughter of Vlad the Impaler, and also she has Muslim in her bloodline, and a lot of people don't know about that as well. Very important things to take note of, because the Muslims will tell you about the jinn. And I'm not putting down Muslims by saying the Queen has this in her bloodline. I've got a point to get to here. The Muslims will tell you of the jinn. And some people know of the jinn as genies. Again, Hollywood and movies have fantasized and romanticized the genie, right? In TV, right? I dream of Genie. Blink. And they've made it seem very keen and fun and popular. And everybody wants a genie so they can have their 3 wishes. But really, the genie's a trickster. They're made of the plasma instead of the earth, the clay of the earth. They're made from the fire from the plasma. They are essentially, in my opinion, the fallen ones. The ones that were created to be our servants. Much like our logical mind and our intuitive mind, right? Our intuitive mind, our right side mind, is the sacred gift. Our left hemisphere brain is our logical mind, and it's the faithful servant. Well, humans were created in God's image, and then the jinn, or the angels, were created from the plasma to be our helpers, to be our servants, to be our faithful sidekick, if you will. Some of them didn't like that plan so much, so some shit went awry, and they've been tricking everybody ever since, for as long as they can get by with it. And now it's time to put an end to their craziness and their shenanigans and their masquerade and their heinous acts that they perpetrate on people, especially children. And honestly, you know, I'm talking about the aliens that I've seen and the crafts that I've seen and stuff like that, but my truest mission in this life, my truest goal, is to teach the children who we are and what our power is, because that will completely end all of the ugly things that can happen to children. All of them. Doesn't matter who it is. Whether it's a bully at school, or a parent or a sibling in their home, or a stranger on the street, or vampires and reptiles, reptilians, who choose to charm or scare the children into manipulation of giving up their free will. If the children knew who they were from day one, if they learn from day one who they are and how to use that, we absolutely end all of the ugly, sad, traumatic, all the way to torturous things or deadly things that could happen to them, because we give them the tools to protect themselves and to be empowered and to be strong in their mind and their faith of who they are and who our Creator is. It changes the whole game. So that is my ultimate goal. Alright? That's my ultimate goal. To save the world, we save the children. We empower ourselves and them. You want to put on your armor of God? Know yourself. Know yourself truly. That's the key. So we've covered reptilians. We've covered vampires. I've also seen grays. Short grays and tall grays. I've seen tall whites. Not on the list that the NSA has of the tall whites, they're considered neutral. But not all of them are neutral. Some of them do have a fondness for us, and others have a great dislike for us as well. Understandably so, because personally, if I wasn't a human being to have compassion for the rest of humanity, I may think so too. Think the way they do too. Not being so fond of humanity, because there's a lot of ugly things to see around you on a daily basis. People are ugly. Bottom line, people can be really ugly. They can be really mean. But they can also be really great. And I have seen humanity at its finest. They're not here all the time, like I am. So they don't have the same vantage point I have to have a different opinion of humanity than they do. But I can definitely empathize with where they come from. And I'm sure a lot of you can too. Because a lot of my clients will say to me that they have always felt different and that they don't really like many people. They like animals better than people. You know, because people are ugly. So I can get it. I totally get it. Anyway, so I've seen tall whites. I've seen, I don't know really what race they are, but they're a very tall, probably 16 to 20 feet tall, very sort of thin type of a being. They remind me of a giraffe because they have a very long neck. The one on board the ship that would come to visit with my sort of like my family from another star system, Pleiadian star system, his name was Zufu, and he was the pilot of the ship. But they can render themselves translucent to where you can't really see through them, or they're sort of shiny in the night, sort of translucent, sparkly, in a strange, almost like a snail trail kind of sheen. It's like that. They're very kind, and they only speak in telepathy, telepathically. Very, very kind, very fierce warriors. So I've seen them. I've seen reptilians who were more soldier type, with very bulky, broad chest, and usually some type of vest or armor on, and weapons. I've seen a winged reptilian who was quite large in stature. I would say probably about 12 feet tall. And I couldn't even imagine how much he must have weighed, probably 500 pounds at least. He was very much, he was the reason that I thought that people think about the dragons as being shapeshifters or whatever. And this was actually, like, he had shapeshifted into this from looking like a man, a human man. And so immediately when I saw this transformation, the shapeshifting happen, I thought of dragons, how some people could have a misidentification with the dragons as well. You know, that they very well could be some breed of, or some species of a reptilian. Not that there isn't other kind of dragons as well, because I think there's more than one dragon too. But he was very strong looking, but just not, he wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger bulky, right? Muscular. So, but nevertheless, very strong looking and long, very long claws. It almost reminded me of like a bird, like a eagle's talons, or raptors, more of a raptor's type claws. The one that I was raped by was more of the soldier, bulky, Arnold Schwarzenegger type. Wasn't anything handsome about him, though. I'll tell you that. What else? Pleiadians. And I've often thought that people that describe Nordics are probably seeing the same thing I know of as Pleiadians. People in Switzerland call them the Pleiadian. It's essentially all the same thing. The Aryan race of aliens could very well be the same as the Pleiadians as also. Some of my research has led me to believe that. But they are the star system that I'm connected to. Taygeta is the planet specifically that I know of. It's a red planet because it's lush and full of red vegetation and red mosses. So it's a red planet in that sense. And it's in the star system of the Pleiadians. What else have I seen? The Greys, the Whites, the Reptilians, the Black-Eyed People, who I think are vampires. The Pleiadians. Okay, so the ant people and the praying mantis, I feel could be one and the same. Because what I have experienced was a very intelligent, very scientific type praying mantis sort. But I wouldn't have used that word, praying mantis, when I was describing him. I would say that he looked more like an ant does. You know, if you look at an ant in a magnifying glass, to me he looked more like an ant, except he was very tall. He was about 8 feet tall. And super intelligent and super powerful with his mind. I mean, he was like the freaking Jedi master of mind power. It was crazy. He was definitely somebody important. And then as I did more research to understand my own experiences and encounters while I was with MUFON, I came upon what everyone was calling praying mantis. This species called the praying mantis. But nobody was really talking about ant people. And then later I discovered that the Native Americans, the Navajo and the Pueblos and the Hopi, several of them had spoke of the ant people. And the description and the pictographs that they have of the ant people is essentially the same thing as the praying mantis. So again, you know, a case of misidentification. I'm leaning toward on that. So yeah, he was a very important figure, and he had a staff in his hand with a big cool ball, like a crystal ball thing on top of it, much like the very tall white that calmed me, if you will, when I was freaking out on some of the gray beings that were doing surgical type procedures on me, and I was really pissed about it. He came over and calmed me down, and he had on this very regal long robe that was like an opaque white with like silver, a silver kind of a, it's not really a collar. It's hard to describe because it's not something we would, it was almost like a half sash really on each side. But he also had a staff that had a huge crystal ball looking thing on his top of his staff, but his crystal ball was really beautiful blue color, and it had some type of finger cloth type structure to it that held the ball in there. You know, it was a magnificent staff, absolutely magnificent. I was always a big fan of like Merlin the Wizard and stuff, and that's what it reminded me of, was like Merlin. It's something Merlin would have had, you know. It was so fantastic. And yeah, he was very calm and peaceful and serene with me. Just, you know, calmed me down to keep me from losing my shit, because I was fixing to, like, I don't even know what I was fixing to do. I didn't know my own power then. I just knew that I was fixing to F some stuff up. They needed to stop. And he knew he needed to stop me and calm me down. And it worked. It worked for whatever reason. Whether he hypnotized me to do it or I did it willingly, I'm not really sure. But it worked. It calmed me down, and they finished their stuff, and then they sent me home. Pretty sure I still have an implant up my nose ever since then. And I was almost 17 when that happened. So, anyway, again, another case of what I really think is mistaken identity with the ant people and the praying mantis. And then also, while I'm talking about misidentifying things, I just want to touch on the chupacabra real quick too. even though we're not really talking about cryptids. The chupacabra is something that people talk about all the time. It's the goat sucker, the blood sucker, whatever. And no, I don't think it's a vampire, so don't even try to guess what I'm getting ready to say here. I actually think that the chupacabra is the once believed extinct animal known as the Tasmanian tiger that came from Australia or Austria. I'm not positive which, but I know that it was brought here to the States. This animal was brought here to the States in the early 1920s, when settlers were first, coming in, and they would bring these animals with them as a pet or whatever. And then these animals would get loose, and the ranchers hated them because they actually wreaked havoc on their herds. And they do essentially like puncture wound with 2 teeth into the main artery of the neck of the animal, and then they drink the blood from the animal. They suckle it out of the animal, and the animals would be found completely bloodless. And so the ranchers started killing these animals every time they would see them, and they are absolutely heinous looking creatures. They absolutely are. But they're a for real animal called a Tasmanian tiger. And they have these weird back legs like a kangaroo, and they're just very malnourished looking, skinny, bony, ugly, hideous creatures. Think about a hyena that's like crippled and starving and losing its hair like it's got mange. And that's what a Tasmanian tiger is. Go look it up. They're crazy ass looking creatures. And I think that is exactly what the chupacabra is. So again, another classic case of how when we don't understand what we're seeing, there's fear put into it, or there's superstition put into it, or, blame it on the witchcraft, or blame it on the demons, or blame whatever. And it's a real life animal, right? Just like vampires are in lore and movies, but they're a real life freaking creature. Reptilians are put in movies and TV shows and lore and, cryptozoology stuff and kooky people stories or whatever, but they're a freaking real life creature that's actually directly related to that Queen of England chick. So, weird world we live in, but we need to start lifting the veils and seeing that this fairy tale stuff over here is not really fairy tales. I mean, come on, look at all the Disney movies that we call fairy tales that all were derived from true stories. Okay? True stories. Beauty and the Beast. That's a classic one, right? Beauty and the Beast. Go look it up. There's this great guy on YouTube. I'll have to share the video link. This great guy on YouTube or group, whatever they are, that digs into the truths about different stories and movies and stuff. And he does a really great piece on the Beauty and the Beast, showing clearly that in the 1500s, where this story was derived from, about the true Beauty and the Beast was a Bigfoot guy. He was clearly what we call Bigfoot today. Oh yeah. I'll leave the link so you can go look, because it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And all of these stories are derived from something real. They're not just stories. Little Mermaid. That was some real life shit that happened that they created a fairy tale story out of. Okay? I mean, like, there's some real facts that we need to be looking into and uncovering these truths. Some real facts. And you know what? I might just do a whole segment on that, and we'll just talk about some of the Mother Goose stories and the Grimm's the Brothers Grimm stories and Disney's stories and where they all came from. Because Red Riding Hood and all of that was a real story. That came from true stuff. You know? There's a lot of them that do. So, I want us to realize that it's not hoopla. It's not fairy tale land. It's not bullshit. And the only way we're going to change that is with our many voices speaking out about it. So, whether you want to share your voice anonymously, your story anonymously, share your voice without your face so that you remain anonymous, or just do a conversation with me where we just talk about it, formally or informally, however you prefer. I'm very flexible on all levels, as long as we're just working together to get our truths out there. It's time we speak up and tell people that this stuff is happening, and get rid of the dogma and get rid of the judgment and the negative aspects that they attach to us, the messenger, for telling it. So anyway, I hope I didn't forget anything. I feel like I've kind of been rambling a little bit. And that's why I usually make little bullet notes for things when I do stuff, so that I don't get off track too far. But, yeah, definitely check that out. If you can read that. Can you see it through the paper this way? Definitely check that out if you can. And Thursday, I will be uploading an interview with the Bronxville Paranormal Research guy, Brian Bowden. Oh my gosh, I forgot his last name. Forgive me, Brian. Bowdens. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think it's Bowdens. Bowdens is his last name. Bronxville Paranormal Research Group. He's also a director, an actor. He's done several TV shows, several radio shows, podcasts, paranormal groups. He's got a great thing on Facebook that he does. He was recently on Phantoms and Monsters radio program. He's phenomenal. I can't wait until you hear this interview with him. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. And that'll be Thursday. So lots of big things happening lately. Lots of moving and shaking happening. And like I told you at the beginning of the year, it's a new you, new year. It's a new year, new you, and it's a new year, new me. And we're going to take the veil off of all of the truths and see how far we can go with all of it in this year, okay? So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, whatever needs to be done. Help the channel grow, because there's lots of big stuff coming. All right, love and light.